And once we start realizing that the value that we provide a person is far greater than what we're charging, we can charge up to whatever that value is.
Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where we feature top leaders on how they measure success in their business and life. Now, let's learn from their experiences.
Carl J. Cox here, host of the Measure Success podcast, where I talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. I'm very excited about our guest that we have here today, Luis Scott. He is, among other things, a four-time author, entrepreneur, and has really gone through some really interesting challenges of life. I'm excited to talk with him today. Luis, welcome to the Measure Success podcast.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. And Luis, I'm going to share a little bit more about you for those who haven't heard of you beforehand. As I mentioned, he's an attorney, an entrepreneur. He speaks on many different engagements out there, four-time author already mentioned. And I'm going to actually put these books up before I can, in case you have not heard of them. There's one of these books is The King of Growth. Thank you so much for sending it to me. Love to get them back, put them back in our bookcase here of all of our guests that come onto the show. And there's actually a more recent edition that just recently came up. I think you said you added 20,000 words to it. That was pretty awesome. And then the book that's been crushing it, which I loved it. You say even surprised you how well it's been doing. It Has to Hurt. And so I encourage you to pick up either one of these books or both of these books. That would make him even happier. But I think once again, you're going to be really impressed with what he has written here in these two books and with other books that he's done as well. He is the founder of Figure Eight Firm Consulting, and he has revolutionized the legal profession by empowering legal professionals to optimize and expand their practices. And he's not just the ordinary guy. He plays the piano. He reads 52 books a year, which is no easy thing. And he loves to cook. Luis, welcome to the Measure Success podcast. Let's get kicked off with something fun outside of what we talked about here. So actually, let's say, what's your favorite thing to cook?
So I normally cook Puerto Rican food. Obviously, I grew up eating it, and it's nostalgic for me. And now my wife, who is not Puerto Rican, has really mastered the art. And so she's taken over the cooking, and she makes a lot of Puerto Rican food. But outside of that, grilling, I love to grill steaks. I love to grill chicken. I love to be outside. I was before, on the pre-show, we were talking about how the weather was just gorgeous this weekend. And I love being outside, growing up in the heat. It doesn't bother me one bit. I want it to be 85 and above, and I want to be able to be in the sun. So that's what I love doing.
Well, that is a lot different from where I am. Of course, this will be a little bit timed out when people hear this and hear this particular podcast, but I live in Oregon. And so 85 and above for most people here is like too hot. Like they're like, oh, that's way too hot. But I actually like that weather that you have. I actually prefer the upper temperatures whenever possible. And so I'm with you. It's like it's the best when it gets a little warm and you could be in your shorts or a t-shirt and just enjoy what you're doing out there. So I do want to go into, okay, you said you mentioned cooking meats and steaks. What's your favorite steak to cook?
I'm a ribeye guy. I like a bone-in ribeye. I like it to be fatty. I like it medium rare. But yeah, I love a ribeye. That's normally what I order. Every time I'm trying to be healthy, I'll order a filet, and then I'll say, I don't know if it's worth it. We should just go back to the ribeye and deal with the consequences when they happen. That's how I feel.
That's so funny because I haven't been, fillets is what I do now. It is my typical thing. I like the smaller cuts, and but when you just like get it right when you cut it, it's like butter. It's just that's my favorite. So this is gonna be a problem. I'm not gonna want to have to cook some steak this week because I'm gonna have to get past that food that I want to eat right now and the result of this podcast. So eventually I have to get something different for lunch today. All right. So a lot of interesting things. How, you became an attorney and you started down that path, and which once again is no easy thing, right? To get into that profession and to be successful at it. But you did something that not many attorneys actually have been able to do, which actually has been able to turn it into being more of a business, right? To actually, it's interesting. Everyone is in business in some way, shape, or form, even though if you don't describe it as such, even if you're not for profit, you're in the business of fulfilling your mission, right? What you are though ultimately doing is though is you are helping out other firms to be more powerful. But how did you go from that transformation? What experience did you have? And you're like, wow, I've got this figured out, and now I can actually help other people with their firms.
I always knew from a very young age that I wanted to be a teacher. Like that was probably my greatest desire. But then I realized that teachers don't make any money, and and that was a problem I had to figure out how to solve. And so I first became an accountant. That was my undergraduate degree, and then I went into law because I knew lawyers made a lot of money. So for me, I went into the profession with the goal and intention of being a business owner. I had an entrepreneurial spirit. I remember doing my very first gig. I was doing dry cleaning for my parents. I would iron all their clothes. I would wash the car. So I was a car wash dealership. I had a lawn service. I had a dry cleaning business all at home, and it made me almost $20 a week. I mean, I was just living in wealth at that time at 12, 13 years old. But that was kind of like my first entry point into entrepreneurship, and I just loved this idea that if I put in the work, I would get paid for it. And it wasn't about the amount of time; it was rather the value. I even understood that it wasn't how much time it took me to iron my parents' clothes. It was the value to them. They didn't have to pay for someone to dry clean it. They didn't have to go to the dry cleaner. They didn't have to leave it there, wait a week. They could just give me the starch, give me the iron, and I could do it at home, and it would be done cheaper, faster, in the comfort of their own home. And I was providing this value. And I remember they'd give me $20, and they never said, here's $20 for 4 hours of work. They would say, here's $20. When you're done, you're done. And I love that concept. And so when I went into the legal profession, I knew that what I wanted to do was to figure out how to build a business so that I could one day become a teacher of that very craft. And from my early 20s, I knew I was going to be a nationally renowned author and speaker. Like that was my goal. And in fact, it continues to be my lifelong mission. And I've hired a speaking coach to help me this year as I continue to have speaking engagements, because right now I'm around 20 to 30 speaking engagements a year. And so I want to continue to enhance it because that's my lifelong mission. So for me, the transition was not that difficult because I just knew from an early age that this is what I was going to do.
I love that. And it is amazing of how many entrepreneurs we have on the show that it just didn't happen. They had that entrepreneurial spirit from a young age, right? And I love also what you said there too, is it's not about how many hours I work to get paid. The goal is to get the job done. And then you earn whatever value that you've created as a result of it. I think that's such a significant difference of when we start understanding that. And I'd even go a step further, Lise. My background is being, well, you mentioned you have an accounting degree, but you got in the law profession. Typically, accountants and lawyers, they both measure their wealth based on time. And it was really interesting when I had actually a funny little story. I had to grab the books real quick, out of the trunk of my car, grab them, bring them. Oh, I just got them, so I want to make sure we record them and showed them on the podcast today. And I half joked. I said, "Hey, you can get 5 minutes of billable time." While I go out of the car, I said, "Oh, I'm no longer doing that." And that right there said a lot, right? Because so many people are constrained in professional services work based on this concept of I'm only worth a certain amount per hour, rather than forgetting the goal is not per hour, the goal is an outcome of what our clients need, right at the end of the day. So let's talk about that concept, because it's a concept that's not understood by many, which is basically value-based pricing. How did you understand that component? And do you help firms get to there? I'm kind of curious. Do you help firms get to value-based pricing versus just doing hourly?
So some of the firms, they're made up of hourly type of work. And so it's hard to transition them because of the nature of the business requires an hourly component. Now, if I could wave a magic wand, I would try to convince people to go to flat fee billing. In fact, I think their life would be better if they would just flat fee bill, but they can't seem to get past this idea that the client is not going to be comfortable paying a flat fee, because they may think in their minds, I'm going to pay you $10,000, but what if it only takes you 1 hour? Now I pay $10,000 an hour. And what I try to emphasize is that you're selling it wrong. If that's what you're thinking, you're selling it as if your hours still have some sort of hourly value. If you sell it as the outcome that you're going to receive is going to be greater than $10,000, then it doesn't matter if you exchange $10,000 for 1 hour or 10 hours. And I think that that's the way we have to pitch things. When I work with the coach, I hired a mindset coach back in October, and the fee was $10,500 for two 30-minute sessions per month. All right. So if you're listening to this, I'm going to say that again so you can understand. $10,500 for two 30-minute sessions per month. Now, first of all, we don't even have to get into why I paid it, but let's get into why this person's able to charge that. And the reason is because the outcome that I am to receive is far greater than the $10,000 I'm expending for 30 minutes of their time. And once we start realizing that the value that we provide a person is far greater than what we're charging, we can charge up to whatever that value is. And so if what you do adds $100,000 of value, why can't you charge 20,000? Why can't you charge 50,000? The person's receiving 2x whatever they're paying. Now, as a consumer of products and services, we want the ROI. We want the greatest ROI, and I totally get that. But from the person who's charging, if you're the entrepreneur and you're the service-based provider, and you're the person selling the product, you should charge as much as you possibly can to justify the value that you're giving. And so when I do consulting, our packages start between $36,000 and all the way up to $240,000 a year. I do not service the $36,000 contracts. Now, it's not because I don't want to help them. It's because when you work with me, I'm essentially going to guarantee you that your business is going to grow multiple seven figures in 18 months or less. Yeah, you have to pay me more than the $36,000 contract that we service for someone who's just getting started. And so it's not about how much time I'm putting into it. It's what is the result that you're getting. And that is how we do value-based pricing. And so that's what I try to teach clients, is to look at it from that perspective.
So well said. And I want to go back to the amount you paid for coaching. I've had at my firm already in here, we're our fifth year of in recording this, in our terms of a 40 strategy, 5-6 coaches I've hired already so far. And I've paid, actually it's beyond that. Now I think about it, think of the amount of training courses I've taken on top of that and money I've spent. So I think I can make an argument 10 different organizations that I've paid for training and information. And it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars if you add up all the money behind it. And people go, why would you do something like that? Well, if I want to accelerate to an outcome, why am I going to wait 2 or 3 years to get to it when I can get to it in 90 days, right? And that's the value component, right? Difference is when I can get to something so much faster and earn more as a result of that. And then, of course, I get to take that knowledge and bring it back to my clients, and then all of a sudden I'm adding more value to all of my clients by getting this information. And there's one other thing too should be of note. When you pay more versus getting something for free, or you will pay more attention to it, right? There's just, you literally, when you pay more for something, you perceive it as higher value, and therefore you're more likely to move forward and find more value out of it. So I love it how you looked at different areas and how people see things. And I even go back to that fixed price concept versus, a value price, or like, okay, we're going to, for these type of things, if you apply the 80-20 rule, and I bet you could even go 90-10, there's very few outliers that all of a sudden you end up doing hardly anything for, like, meaning where like the attorney at the end of the day, they're worried, right? Or the accountant, they're worried that they're not going to get enough value and they're going to lose money in the project. It's like, that's rare. And it really comes down to that. It's probably because things are out of scope compared to what you originally said you were going to deliver. And so make sure that you're properly say, hey, we're outside of scope now. Let's make sure we properly bill for that. But that's the exception, not the norm.
Yeah, I think a lot of times what we do is we think about all the exceptions, and then we try to run our business based on the exceptions instead of looking at what is the normal course of business, and then dealing with the exceptions when they come. And that's the way we've kind of priced everything. This is what's going to normally happen, and this is what the value you're going to get from this type of product. And every once in a while, we're going to put in more work than you're paying for. And every once in a while, you're going to feel like you're paying for more than the work we're putting in, but it all averages out over time. And we can have the conversation when either of those two things happen. Obviously, from a business perspective, we want to do everything we can to never under deliver on what they're paying for sure. But that happens sometimes. I've worked with clients that they get 4 calls a month, but they only want 1 call a month. And it's like, look, if you're willing to pay the same price for 1 call a month, and I'm being forced to under deliver on what the package says, then as long as we're okay with that arrangement, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, boy, you said something really important there. I think a lot of times when we get sold on things, we'll hear this, oh, I can get you X amount of clients per month. There's like people out there like, oh, a really good human being actually, but he has 100 calls per week or something like that, and like, I don't have time for 100 calls per week. I'm still actively directly working with clients, and helping them out with their particular matters. Like the last thing I want is 100 calls per week, right? But what I do want is the right amount of valuable calls each week. That is going to help continue to grow our business. And so I think that's important. What you said there is like, you don't always have to take what somebody's promising for the high end. If it's still creating value for you and your firm, and you're able to grow whatever it is, whatever your business is, that can still be a value. We can't, there's just as many problems of having too much, and all of a sudden you can't scale your business, to the next part. So one of the things you said, Luis, that I thought was really interesting is you were like, this is once again part of our just pre-recording. You were like, man, one of the things that's been surprise. I think you said the word surprising. I guess the right thing to say is you're like, I must be a heck of a manager because people are still reaching out to me consistently, and I must be doing something right. Can you add a little bit to that? What does that mean? And then how have you learned to be a boss, so to speak, right? Be a manager of people, so to speak, but also be someone that is connecting with their employees.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have difficulty with this because they view the employee-employee relationship as a transactional relationship. And I've always told people, yes, you're giving them money, which is what makes this relationship unique, but it's still a relationship and it needs to be much more than just a transaction. And so I developed 2 things for leading, and it's my 2 rules for leadership. And it's you lead with love and you always show grace. And the show grace part was something that I learned from my dad. He was a pastor and he used to always say, I'm going to err on the side of grace. If I'm going to make a mistake, I'm going to be more gracious than I need to be. I'm not going to be more tyrannical, more dictatorial, more difficult type of side. I'm not going to err on that side. I'm going to err on the side of being taken advantage of. And I think a lot of people have a hard time with that. They'll say, I don't want to be taken advantage of as a business owner. I don't want to be taken advantage of as a leader. And I say, no, take advantage of me. Take advantage of me, because when you take advantage of me, that means I'm giving you more than what you're paying for. I'm giving you more than what you deserve. And if I'm going to make an error, I'd rather err on that side. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes that feels very, very hard, right? When you know someone's taking advantage of your generosity and your kindness. But I just learned that when you lead with love and you show grace and you allow people to experience the best of you and the most of you, then the return is that they work better for you. I was working with a client recently, and they were saying, I can't get my employees to do anything. I can't get them to do anything. And I said, well, they probably don't think you care about them. No, 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 no. I care about them. I care about them. Well, if you care about them, why won't they do anything for you? Have you ever been so difficult to deal with that people who you care for can expect nothing from you? Do people who you care for, do they expect something from you? And she said, yeah, they expect something from you. And you expect something from the people you care about too, right? So if care is the connection between getting someone to do something and not to do something, then that means when they're not doing something, you don't care about them, or at least they don't perceive that. And I always give the relationship with my wife. I care for her so deeply that when she asks for something, I want to give it to her. I care for my kids so deeply that when they ask for something, they're not my boss. But when my kids ask for something, the other day on a Friday night, my son wanted a new pair of shoes. I said, sure, let's go to the store and get it, because I care about him. And he wanted another pair of shoes. He thought his pair of shoes made him look whatever, but he wanted another. He's about to turn 12, but he wanted another pair of shoes, and I care for him, so I did it. So that means if your people are not doing what you need, it must mean they don't think you care about them. And so I think care is that connection piece. And I learned that both through my dad and in working with people. And the more I care for my team in every way, when I think about them, I could just write a list of things that people have reminded me about that I forgot. I have a story of one of my employees, a very, very sad story, but randomly we were at an event, and I have a lot of Sky Miles, as many entrepreneurs do. Through Amex, you can get Sky Miles or Sky Miles card. I had a lot of Sky Miles, and I heard that she wanted to go to Paris, and she wanted to go to Paris with one of her friends. For whatever reason, I was just like, you know what? I'll pay for it. I'm gonna put my Sky Miles on your account. I'll get you the flight. She ended up going to Paris. She spent like maybe 4 or 5 days in Paris. When they came back, I think about two weeks later, her friend, the only friend that she went with, died. And she tells me to this day, this was many years ago, that that was one of the single greatest acts of kindness that she's ever experienced. She got to spend 5 days, just her and her best friend in Paris, because I was kind enough and caring enough about her as a person. She still works with me today and has now worked with me for 5 years and is one of my favorite and best employees. And I think that when we get out of our way and we start desiring to experience the fullness of our team, and we stop looking at them as transactional beings, and we start really caring about them, they will experience this in a way that anything you ask for, they will do, and your business will be better because of it. Because here's the thing, and this is something I always tell my clients: the shortcut to success is your team. That's it. That's the greatest shortcut. So treat them that way.
There is so much wisdom you packed into that. And one of the key pieces I want to share, it just in response to it, is what you were describing was servant-based leadership. Once again, for those who haven't read Good to Great, and that's why it's one of the books that sits right behind me on top of it, is because I like to refer to it as the Bible of business, because there's just so many truths in there. And even Jim Collins himself said, I don't want this book to be about leadership. But in all 11 companies that they investigated, all 11 had servant-based leaders, and they call it level 5 leaders to put a kind of a non-religious type view on it. You wouldn't call it servant, but the reality is when you put the employees of your company before thyself as more important, and you really care about in that way, they're going to run through a wall for you. And that's not the why you're doing it, just to clarify, but you're recognizing when you do great things, people will follow you, and they're doing great things because you have chosen to make them great and to do great things for them. And then the reciprocation is they'll reciprocate that in love by wanting to be with you and wanting to work with you and do these pieces. So I love it how you talk about it. And then that grace component is massive. I remember, Luis, I had a young professional. He was an accountant. He was on my accounting team. This is earlier in my career. And he made a mistake. And it was a relatively significant mistake. And I didn't yell at him. I didn't go crazy on him. I didn't say what a loser he was. We just went through the facts. And it was interesting. A few days later, he came back to me and he's like, Carl, when are you going to yell at me? He felt I wasn't being transparent. I was like, no. You've learned today, right? I don't have to treat you like crap when something goes wrong. Let's use this as a learning experience. Let's try not to do it again, right? But that mistake is, if we learn, it's going to be one of the most valuable lessons that you can ever have. And more importantly, hopefully you'll treat your future team like that as well. You won't treat them like trash when they make a mistake or they make an error. And that's when it comes to that grace part. I think it's just a massive, and it's so unexpected because it's not the norm, right? The norm is, and especially, gosh, in today's social media, all we want to do is make fun of people's errors and mistakes that they made. And yeah, it might be humorous, but it's not good, right? It's not really healthy, when people experience this. All right, so I want to pop over to your book. It Has to Hurt, and you said it's been crushing it, and I love the title because all of us have experienced hurt one time in our life. Why do you think it's resonating so much with the audience?
Well, when I wrote the book, the original reason to write the book was to preserve my story for my kids. And I have a very tough story, and a lot of my story people would categorize as self-inflicted pains. I think all of us are guilty of self-inflicted pains, whether it's because we're insecure or we just make bad decisions. And I made a lot of bad business decisions, and not all of my relationships worked out, and I had different levels of insecurity because of different things that people had said to me. Like, one of the things that was said to me when I was going to law school was, hey man, you're going to get into law school easy. I mean, you're just based on affirmative action alone. I mean, do you know how devastating that is for someone to say the only reason I'm going to get into law school was because I was not white and I was a minority? And that I started replaying that, like, well, maybe I'm dumb. Maybe I'm actually not that smart. And so overcoming those, what some people call today microaggressions, that really have weighed on my life. At one point, I was told that I wasn't a good enough athlete to go to college, but then I ended up getting a Division I scholarship. And so I've had these kind of things happen, and many of us have had these kind of things happen. And the question is, what do you do from there? Like, what do you do once you've had that pain and the inflicted on you, and you have that scar? How do you recover? How do you bounce back from a divorce? How do you bounce back from a failed business or a failed partnership in business? And that's what the book talked about. So it was my story intermingled with lessons on what I learned and then how you can recover. And I think it's just been really resonating with people. And it's amazing to see, like, every single day selling a couple books, 2 3 4 books a day. So it's weird to see it happening, and one of my favorite writings, because it's really just my story, but with the lessons on how you can actually come from that pit of despair. And I talk about my house going into foreclosure, my car being repossessed. And it's funny, there was this book, and it was called something like, I can't remember the title, but it was something along the lines of, whatever the devil takes, God will replace, or whatever, 10 times or something like that. And I remember reading, it wasn't even really that good of a book, but I remember the title is always held in my mind, because I'm like, yeah, whatever I lose, I'm going to get it back. And so when I think about the fact that my house was in foreclosure and now I own multiple homes, and my car was in repossession, but now I own a Lamborghini, it's like, wow, everything I lost, because I maintained that positive attitude and continued to work hard and continued to believe, I've gotten back, but I've gotten it back like 10x in ways I couldn't have imagined. So that's what the book's about. And I think it's resonating with people because people have a similar story of despair, a similar story of hurt. And I think what they want is, they want a similar outcome and ending that I've had and been able to enjoy. And that's my hope. I hope people do have that.
Yeah, it's such a difficult thing, right? Is when the words we replay in our heads because of something that happened in the past, and we continue to live in it, right? And you said some really powerful things there. I think that what you said there about affirmative action, I haven't heard too many people say that, but that's real, right? What you just described there, right? Where people potentially do get in because, or part of the reason, and maybe it's not even at all, right? But there's a label there, right? That you weren't quote unquote deserving. The only reason you were deserving was because of whatever, race, ethnicity, background, whatever it might be. But that doesn't change that you have the opportunity, and you're a person, no matter what your background is, no matter what color the skin is, no matter what ethnicity you have, we all have the potential to be extraordinary. And we have to believe that, though, right? We have to believe that it's true. And I grew up poor and free and reduced lunch, and I had a lot of that baggage in my background, that I wasn't worthy. I wasn't able to have money in my bank account, because I used to manage my mom's account, and we'd have money and then it'd be gone, right? Have money and be gone. And that was my life experience for a good part of my life. It's like, there's got to be a better way, right, on doing some of this. We have this horrible problem, Luis, of we have a time restriction on how much we record, and I have a few more questions I need to ask you. We might have to have you on again, because this has been really fun, and I'm learning. I'm inspired by what you've been talking about through this, Luis, and there's so much more and deeper part of your story. But I do have to ask some of my fun, quick questions. In your business of how you're helping people out today, how do you measure success?
I mean, for me, success is helping firms get to 8 figures in predictable revenue. And the reason for that is, I believe that, especially in the legal industry, but really in any service-based business, you can turn a 20% profit margin. And if you can turn a 20% profit margin on 10 million in revenue, you're going to have $2 million in personal income, where you can actually self-actualize, because people can't become who they were created to become until they no longer think about money. And it doesn't mean that we're billionaires, but there comes a time financially where you don't really think about the grocery bill or the gas. When somebody says, "Oh my gosh, gas is $4," I'm like, "Really? What? I didn't even know that." I was like, it's like there comes a time where you don't think about it, and you can actually live a life where you are living in your calling. And so that's why that number is so impactful for me. But also, in the legal industry, for every firm that reaches 10 million in predictable revenue, they're helping at least 1,000 people per year. So if I can help 100 law firms reach 1,000 people per year, that's 100,000 people being helped every single year. And last year, I'm super proud of the fact that we reached the halfway point, and 50,000 people were helped through the law firms that we work with. And so for me, success is helping more firms establish that primary position in their community, helping 1,000 people a year. And I think that the more people we can help do that, our communities will be different, but also the world will be different. And that to me means more than anything.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now we're going to flip it to the other side. And you've shared a little bit about today. How do you measure success in your personal life?
So for me in my personal life, I always talk about the 4 Fs, the 4 F words. Do I feel like I'm in right relationship in my faith? So that's the first thing. How do I feel about my family? How do I feel about my friends? And how do I feel about my finances? And so in my faith, do I feel connected? That's what I'm always looking for in my family. How's my relationship with my wife? How's my relationship with my kids? I pride myself in we do 1, maybe 2 date nights per week. That's super important for me with my wife, my kids. I try to attend every single band, soccer. I mean, it gets tough. I have 4 kids. It's really tough to get to everything, but I try to attend everything I can. I want them to look at me as not only an authority, but also a mentor and someone who's going to guide them to living and creating their best life. My friends, I pride myself in having a lot of friends. There's always a joke when I have a birthday party. We usually have to do one of those group rates, because it's usually 20, 30 people show up. And I just love having friends. And then the finances, do I feel like I'm achieving my goals? And obviously I'm in pursuit. There's other things that I want in life. Am I getting closer to the dreams that I have? And yes, I do have dreams of other toys and stuff like that, but where am I financially? And can I provide the things for my family that make me happy and make me self-fulfilled? And so those are the 4 areas that I really look at every day. And as long as I'm in pursuit of those things, I feel successful.
Okay. 2 final questions for you. What is a book outside of your own that you recommend or really transformed your life?
I mean, I have a couple of books that really transformed my life. And I know you said 1, but I'm going to give a couple. The first one is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F by Mark Manson. He talks about how it's not about not caring about anything, but knowing what to care about, such as the values and virtues of people. That book helped me better learn to be okay being who I was and stop worrying about what people thought about me. I thought that was a really important thing that every person needs to go through as an entrepreneur. The second book is The 4 Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. In The 4 Agreements, he talks about not taking anything personally. I think that's a superpower, is just not taking anything personally. I think people take things personally. They assume that everything's about them, and it's not. Sometimes somebody's just having a bad day and it has nothing to do with you. And so I thought that was a really good book as it related to people. A business book, I would say No Ego by Cy Wakeman. Just absolutely phenomenal book on reality-based leadership and how to prepare your team for change and how to get rid of the ego in your business. So if you're running a business, I think No Ego is very powerful. If you're working on manifestation and living the life that you want, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles is a really great book. And Raymond Hollywell has another kind of like book called Working with the Laws, which is also really good on manifestation. And then if you want anything on leadership, because I'm real big, I believe leaders rule the world, and they rule and run the world. Anything John Maxwell, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, one of my favorite books. So I know that's more than one, but I try to give multiple categories.
No, I love it. I thought that was a great list of books, and clearly they have had an impact in your life in many different ways, many different aspects of your life, which I thought was fantastic. How can people connect and learn more about what you're doing?
They can reach me on my website, luisscottjr.com, LuissScottJr.com. They can find my books, book me for speaking, check out the podcast, and check out 8-Figure Firm Consulting.
Luis, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Measure Success podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And to everyone else who's listening, I hope you've loved this podcast. I know I have. I've learned critical aspects. I'm inspired by what Luis is doing. And as we always like to say, wishing you the very best at measuring your success. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Measure Success podcast. We'll see you again next time to learn from the best. Remember to subscribe now to get future episodes.